This episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/geeks or via PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. And so I want to give a special thank you to Leslie Lewis, who just signed up this week to support us on Patreon, and to Matthew Mayer, who just increased his pledge amount. I also want to give a special thank you to Hans Schneider, who just made a very generous contribution to the show via PayPal. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so now let's get to our show.
Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 498 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Today on the show, we'll be discussing the movies Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Explorers, Starman, Tron, and Dark Star. And this won't involve spoilers for all of those movies, so just beware of that. And this is a follow-up to our panels on awesome 80s science fiction movies back in episodes 490 and 494, so definitely check those out if you missed them. And I'm joined by three guests, who are all making their 24th appearance on the show. So first up, we've got Andrea Kail. She's a graduate of the Odyssey Writers Workshop, and her short fiction appears in the Writers of the Future anthology, Fantasy Magazine, and Lightspeed. She's been a television writer, producer, and script supervisor for shows such as Late Night with Conan O'Brien, The Chew, and WWE's Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. And she's currently shopping her reality show, The Night. So Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be back.
Then next up, we've got Matthew Kressel. He's the author of the novel King of Shards, and his short story Now We Paint Worlds was just published on Tor.com. Together with Ellen Datlow, he hosts the monthly fantastic fiction reading series at the KGB Bar in New York, and his second novel, Queen of Static, is available now on his Patreon page over at patreon.com/Matt Kressel. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be back.
And also joining us today is Tom Gerencer. His short fiction appears in magazines such as Galaxy's Edge, and in books such as New Voices in Science Fiction. He's the author of the business book Think Like Google, and the short story collection Intergalactic Refrigerator Repairmen Seldom Carry Cash. And his popular science book How It's Made, written for the Discovery Channel, will be out later this year. So Tom, welcome to the show.
It's great to be back.
Okay, so let's start off with Andrea, and have you tell us about your history with these 5 movies.
Well, the two I knew very well were Close Encounters and Starman. And I loved both. Tron, it's funny, I thought I'd seen Tron, but then I watched it and I'm like, I don't think I've ever actually seen it. So yeah, I think that was my first viewing of it. Explorers I had heard of, but I'd never seen. And Dark Star I had never even heard of, and now I know why. So there you go. That's my history of these movies.
I'm sorry to hear that, because my goal with after the whole Howard the Duck debacle last time, I was hoping to have no movies that we hated this time around, but it sounds like maybe that didn't quite work out as planned.
Well, I don't know that maybe I do say hate. I don't know. So,
all right, well, yeah,
we can get into that.
Let's save it for the conversation. Yes,
it may not be Howard the Duck bad.
It's not quite Howard the Duck.
Right.
Howard the Duck is a certain kind of train wreck, as opposed to Dark Star.
Yeah, you can only go up from Howard the Duck.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So how about Matt? What were your how much familiarity did you have with these movies going into this?
So I had seen all of them. I was very familiar with Close Encounters, of course, Tron, Starman. Explorers actually was one of those rare movies that I would mention to people. And I was like, have you ever seen that? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh my God, I love this movie. Dark Star, I think I saw it maybe 15, 20 years ago at the recommendation of someone. It might have been at the Fantastic Fiction series. Like, oh, you have to see Dark Star. And then I saw it then, and we can get into it. But my feelings are similar to Andrea's. And it's like, you know how sometimes you see a movie 15, 20 years ago, and you're like, I don't remember really liking it very much. Maybe my tastes have changed, and then you rewatch it, and you're like, no, I was right. It was kind of like that, but I had seen all of them. I think this was maybe my second time seeing Dark Star, but the others I've probably seen, multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, I was coming to these pretty fresh. I mean, I had, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is one of those movies that I'd never seen before, and it's just like, I don't know why I never saw it.
You never saw this before?
How is that
this
possible?
Podcast?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, and you guys keep mentioning it, so I was like, all right, I have to watch this movie finally. I think just as a kid, I mean, this came out before I was born, and I think just as a kid, I was.
Don't have to stick the knife.
Right.
I think I thought it would be scary. So there was something about the box or something. I think I thought this would be kind of scary. So I, sort of like.
It is a little scary if you're a kid.
If you're a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Close Encounters when I was really young, and
yeah, me too.
The scene where the boy is abducted scared the crap out of me.
It is terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's why I'd never seen it. But I was like, okay, it's time. I got to watch this. And then I had never seen Starman or Dark Star at all, and I had definitely seen Tron and Explorers, but when I was a real little kid, and I didn't remember. All I remembered about Explorers was I remember that they have the force field sphere, and as soon as I watched the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that, but I didn't remember anything about the characters or the plot or anything. And then Tron, I don't think I was actually sort of shocked when I watched it that there's 30 minutes of total live action stuff. The whole first act I didn't remember that at all. I just remembered it being this sort of endless, interminable movie where they're like wandering around a computer. And I was like, well, maybe let me watch it as an adult and see what I think of it now. But I didn't remember the beginning or the end or the plot really or anything. I just had sort of images that I remembered. And then how about Tom? What was your experience with these 5 movies?
So Close Encounters I saw when I was, I think, 9 years old in the theater, and it absolutely not only blew my mind, but probably rewrote a lot of my mind and set me off on a path of really loving science fiction, maybe in a way that Star Wars even didn't do. And then Tron and Starman were kind of movies that somehow I missed when they were in the theater, even though I was sort of at the right age, but saw them on TV and really enjoyed them. And I've seen them. I hadn't really seen Starman actually all the way through. I had seen bits and pieces of it. Tron I had seen. It was the love story thing turned me off as a younger, when I was young. I don't want to see this.
Kissing scenes.
Yeah. Is this a kissing part like the kid, like Fred Savage? And
yeah, exactly.
Princess Bride. But then, I had seen Explorers when I was fully grown. I saw it on TV and wasn't really that impressed. And then saw, had never seen or heard of Dark Star, but I love John Carpenter, and so I was kind of excited to see it until I saw it, and now I'm not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're going to save Dark Star for the end, so let's
good.
Oh man,
put that on ice for a second. But I was going to
just pull off that Band-Aid.
Yeah, just rip it right off.
Yeah.
No, I've got things to say.
Okay.
No, because I wanted to start off with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because this is a classic movie, and I just saw it for the first time. It's 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and you guys are always talking about it, so now you guys can talk about it, and I'll actually know what you're talking about.
Excellent.
Awesome.
I kind of want to hear what you think, Dave, since you'd never seen it before.
Yeah, you go first before we spoil it with our thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought that it was like a lot of movies from the 70s and 80s. I thought the pacing was pretty slow.
Really?
And
that's a bad thing?
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little too slow for me. But I mean, I thought that the story was real. So the story I'll just explain is that there's this sort of ordinary guy. I think he's like electrical
telephone repairman
or something. Yeah. And he one night he's driving around in his truck on a job, and a UFO kind of hovers over him and shines lights on him, and this kind of changes the whole trajectory of his life, because it's projected some images of this mountain into his mind, and he's obsessed with recreating this image of the mountain and figuring out what all this means. And and he sort of goes a little nuts, and it sort of tanks his marriage.
A little?
Yeah.
He goes very nuts, and it definitely tanks his marriage. And it eventually,
Well, which was a bad marriage to begin with.
okay, well,
I don't know if that's clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? It was to me, but then
I
again,
have theories, but
wait. Let me
Yeah,
just finish.
okay,
Let me just
sorry.
finish the plot. And
Sorry.
So eventually he realizes that this mountain in his mind is this particular, what's it called, Devil's Tower, I think, in Wyoming.
Devil's
in
Tower,
Wyoming.
yeah.
And actually there's a bunch of people who have all had the same image planted in their heads, who have all been, had close encounters with UFOs, and so they're all sort of trying to converge on it. And the government has this fake like poison gas outbreak or something to keep people away, because they don't want anyone interfering with their own attempts to contact the aliens. And then at the end, a UFO, spoiler warning, but a UFO comes, and I mean, this is the one part of the movie that I knew just from sort of cultural osmosis, was this big shiny city-shaped kind of UFO comes and hovers over the mountain, and there's the sort of first contact scenario. I guess it's not technically first contact because they've already abducted a bunch of people and everything, but it's this sort of contact with aliens scenario. And so I enjoyed the movie a lot. I mean, I thought Richard Dreyfuss, who plays the main character, I thought he did a great job. I found him a really compelling character. The visuals, especially considering this is from 1977, the visuals I thought were absolutely spectacular. And particularly, this is really, I think it's completely before CGI. Maybe it's just mostly before CGI, but
I think
like
completely.
a lot of the things where there's like tons of like helicopters and tons of government employees running around and stuff, it's all real. You can tell it's not CGI. It's, they actually built all this stuff, and that's really like visually amazing. I have some criticisms, but how about I'll just go around. Andrea, what is that? Anything I just say, does that spark anything for you?
Yeah. Well, let me just say that, I think I'm pretty certain that I saw this in the theater when it came out. I was really young, but I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater. And I remember that sense of awe of it, because it was like mind expanding. But I haven't seen it in years and years. And watching it again, I had the same experience. It stands up better than most movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Including the special effects. Like, it's shocking how well it's done. How it doesn't look dated in any way. It's just, I think it's a stunning movie. It's a classic, and it really shocked me how well it stood up. And I was in awe again. As far as feeling like it dragged, I actually have notes saying, it doesn't feel like it drags.
I agree.
Because this is a thing I've been doing lately with movies, is if a scene seems really long, I'll stop and go back and time it, just for my own benefit in writing. Everything that seems really long, any scene that seems really long, to every time it comes out at 3 minutes. Anything that seems excruciatingly long is 3:30.
Wow.
So I actually started timing the scenes in this movie as I was watching it, and the longest ones are 3:30. The traffic control scene and the fight scene in the house right at the beginning, which is why I say they have a bad marriage, because it's like such a tense, where the kids are screaming and she's screaming at him and he's ignoring her. It was really painful actually to watch. But both of those scenes are 3:30.
Huh.
But for me, which usually means it's a really long, really overlong scene, but both of them I found really, really tense. I thought they were incredibly well done. Yeah. So I disagree with you on this.
I think maybe the issue for me is that I basically knew the ending already, right? I knew that, and I think it's pretty clear anyway, right? Like he's going to go to this mountain and meet the aliens at the end, and so like all the stuff of him like forming the tower out of shaving cream and forming it out of cake and forming it out of dirt and everything, like it got to a little bit to the point where like, okay, can move along with this. Like, I already know where this is going. Let's get to
But
Act
imagine
3.
that if you were a first time viewer of this movie and you didn't really know where it was leading.
Yeah,
I think the mystery of it, of what does this mean? You know, he literally says it, and then, you know, that part where, you know, his wife has just left. He's totally obsessed. He's built this giant model in his living room, and then you see it on the television. Like, I knew it was coming. I get the chills every time.
Yeah, me too.
Can I jump in, Dave?
Sure, go ahead.
Andrea, sorry. So we were just talking about pacing and timing. Like, this is Spielberg's by far his best film.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
And the timing, the beats between, it's just so perfect. I've studied this. Like, I don't write for TV or film. I write fiction, but like, just the beats, the timing, it's so perfect. Everything is just so well paced. You know, after watching Dark Star, where there's like, you know, a 20-minute scene of someone stuck in an elevator. Did you time that scene, by the way? I'm curious how long.
I didn't. I was tempted.
15, 20 minutes.
I was very tempted, but then I'm like, I'm going to have to spend more time watching this. No. Hell no.
Yeah. It's just so well paced. So the air traffic controller scene, like, that is a masterclass in building tension. Like, there's almost no special effects in that scene at all. Like, if you look carefully, like they added a few lights on the air traffic controller's dashboard. Those guys, or I don't know if all of them were, but I know the main guy was a real air traffic controller.
Wow. You know what? I was wondering. I was like, that guy he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think a couple of them were, and the way they were just talking to each other, and like, if you think about it, you never see the planes. You never see what the planes saw. Spielberg does that all in your imagination. And if you look carefully, there's very few cuts in that scene. It is just a master of tension building and writing. And like, today, like, if they did that, they'd have the plane flying, right? They'd have crazy, like, fake CGI angles and UFOs and the reactions from the people on the plane and the kids, "Mommy, what's that?" Like, and it just like, all right, it's like, but it's all done in your imagination.
Yeah, it's a brilliant scene, absolutely. And also, you know, like that building the story in the viewer's head. This was a film he made directly after Jaws. Jaws is all about building the monster in your head, which actually for him was an accident because the shark
it couldn't help it. They couldn't help it, but it wound up so great.
Exactly. And the fact that he learned that lesson, I'm assuming from that experience of making Jaws, and he brought it and did it deliberately here. And it is just so gripping.
It's also really well researched. So the guy who plays Mr. Lacombe, the French guy, he was based off of a real UFO researcher. He's still alive. His name is Jacques Vallée, or Vallée.
Yeah.
I'm not good with my French pronunciation. And he's like a hero in the UFO community. Like, he totally is a believer, but he's a scientist. Everything he does is really methodical. He's convinced that UFOs are real, and he thinks that they're a spiritual thing. They're not a physical thing. That, in other words, they're like some higher. I don't quite understand it. But
they're like angels or something.
Not quite angels, just sort of multi-dimensional kind of beings or something like that are cued into our psyche. So it was interesting in that, you know, having read up more on the real character that Lacombe was based off of, to see how the aliens are basically communicating psychically. They transmit these messages psychically. And I was like, you know, I always wondered, like, why do they abduct this boy? The mother's like, go away. But the boy goes with them. And why?
Yeah.
Because he wants to. So if you watch very carefully, he sees the aliens before they abduct him, and he smiles at them. They never show it, but he smiles. He wants to go with them. He wants someone to play with. He's like this kid all alone.
A child,
and
it's the child in us, you know,
right? And that's why he went, and that's why they took him. Not because, like, you know, they were just like, let's just abduct a kid and scare the hell out of his mother. Like, I think there was a communication issue there. Clearly, like, they didn't quite understand that they were scaring us.
Yeah.
Can I ask Tom though? You said that this like rewrote your brain or changed your life or something. Can you say like what impact? Say more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Star Wars was mind blowing. I saw that when I was 8, and when I had just turned 8, and I was just absolutely blown away by the fantasy of it. It's a fairy tale, right? I mean, obviously, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But this came out about a year later, maybe a little more than a year later, which I was talking to him. I went and saw it in the theater with my friend Greg, who I met when I was 2, and we still talk, every week on the phone. And I was telling him I was getting ready to do this panel, and he was like, "Oh, that's so cool." And we got talking about this movie a lot. And he was like, "Remember when we went to see it when we were like, I don't know, we were like 9, I think. We both went to go see it in the theater, and it just completely took that Star Wars ethos of like, you've got this like really cool, amazing fantasy out in space, and it went, no, what if that was right down in your backyard instead?" And you were suddenly like, holy cow, that's so much cooler. As a little kid, this stuff could be real. And I became like a junior Lackham at that point. I like was so into UFOs. I would talk about them all the time. My friend Greg and I would like be on the swings at our elementary school, just swinging and talking to each other. Like, imagine if like a UFO was just like hovering over our school down there, and you could picture it because you'd seen it in Close Encounters. And and my mom started buying me. I would ask her to buy like books on UFOs, and then I started getting into science fiction and reading books on science fiction. But it made it so It made it seem so possible that there really could be something else out there. And it just totally like Matt's saying, it gave me chills just to think about it all the time growing up. And certainly, I go back and watch this movie like probably once every 5 years. I go back and watch it again, and I'm always kind of a little like, I have to say, Dave, I think a kid like you, you grew up with a shorter attention span. I'm kidding, but you probably played a lot of video games, but no. Back in the 70s, movies were just slow because it was more about the director of photography mixing in with the scriptwriter and saying like, look, here's a cool photograph, and then we're going to put like words and motion in it. And I appreciated that more back then. But you're right. This one kind of cracks along, I think. I do kind of feel like before I go and watch it every 5 years, I think like, well, it's going to be a little slower. It's not like there's like explosions and aliens shooting each other and stuff, but I'll go watch it anyway. And then I'm always blown away by how I just get pulled right through the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, so, like, gripped by something that not much really happens. I mean, when you think about in terms of the aliens, not much really happens. Yeah, but,
well, actually, let me jump in there, because that was my one. That was my one really real criticism that I know you guys are all going to disagree with, but I felt like it did not make a ton of sense to me what the aliens did. And Matt was like, the stuff Matt was saying, like, okay, that makes a little more sense now. But it's like if they've already abducted people from World War II and stuff, why did they need to communicate with music? Like, they can't learn how to speak English. It's just like there just seems.
So I have a theory.
Okay, go ahead. What's your theory?
My theory is that they haven't actually been on Earth that long. Like they try, they sort of hinted at it in the end. He's like, Einstein was right. Einstein was probably one of them.
One of them, yeah.
That they just came here. Like, they literally just arrived, and they've been zooming around, checking us out for a little while. They've only been here their time for, I don't know, a couple months maybe.
Yes, exactly.
And they're just checking us out. And then they're like, oh, all right, I think it's time we contact them, and maybe the people who they abducted, like, we want to go home, and that's what happened. So they weren't abducting people for 50 years or whatever. They were only abducted them for like a few months of their time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that's actually
that's science.
That's interesting, but I mean, I still feel like even if it was a couple months subjectively for them, that still seems to be enough time to figure out like, oh, we're like scaring the crap out of people, and abducting kids and stuff is like upsetting people.
I mean, nobody actually looked scared when they got off the ship.
But the people
confused.
the people like the mom was like, how do they not realize the mom is going to be scared when they abduct her like little kid and stuff?
Because they don't know too much about
humans. Go ahead, Andrea. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying maybe they just don't know that much about humans, and they don't understand that that's.
But they have humans on their ship with them.
For like not very long though.
But I think that there was still a communication barrier. I think that they really didn't understand us all that well. Yeah, like I think that they were clearly trying to establish communication, and that's part of what the music was.
Yeah.
I mean, these theories are cool and they make a lot of sense, and so does your criticism, Dave. But the biggest thing that I love about this movie is that it left, like when you left the theater, you had so many more questions than you went in with, but you had so much more excitement than you went in with. And I kept those questions for the rest of my life, and I go back to them often and think like, well, what were they trying to do? Why were they scaring the kid? Like, why did this happen? And what I absolutely love that hasn't happened is that they haven't gone back and made like a prequel or a sequel to try to like, hey, let's answer all the questions. You know what? Midichlorians are behind it. So like, they haven't gone in and like, and I pray to God they never do. I really don't ever want to know the answer. I don't ever want to know what somebody thinks the answer is, apart from, talking like this and speculating. I don't want somebody to go in and say, here's the official canon explanation of what was really going on. Because what I love more is what it created in my mind.
Yes,
exactly.
This huge mystery that I can work on, this huge like real estate of what the aliens could be and maybe what's going on, maybe what's not. I don't really know, but it's so exciting to think about. I really love Spielberg for having created that in my brain.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay, so we need to start bringing in some of these other movies. So let me bring in Starman.
I can talk for another hour about this movie.
Okay, maybe we should
move on quickly. Do you know what Close Encounters of the Third Kind are?
Contact.
Yeah.
Contact.
Yeah, because you were commenting how you don't get any real contact until the end. Well, that's the third kind, and then you have the first and second kind. The first kind is what's seeing the ship or something like that. The second kind is seeing the ship up close.
I think second kind is evidence, isn't it?
Yeah, physical evidence.
Yeah, evidence.
Physical evidence. Okay.
And then the third kind is communication. Yeah, and that was based on a real ufologist's like taxonomy.
I just want to say one thing. I know you want to move on. One of my favorite parts is like when the alien ships first fly down to Devil's Tower and they record it and then they fly off and they all clap and like, congratulations everyone, good show. And you think it's done. You're like, no, it's just beginning. Like,
it's like a fireworks display with the fake finale.
Yeah, and you're like,
actually, just because I want to talk about my favorite part, but it actually dovetails with that, which is he plays with expectations. The scene at the beginning where Roy is lost in the car and he stops and he pulls out his maps and a car pulls up behind him and it's just lights and he waves forward and you think it's a ship, an alien ship, and then it pulls up next to him and it's just a guy who curses him out for stopping in the middle of the road. And then it happens again like a couple minutes later and more lights behind him and he waves it forward and you think it's going to be another car and then it ends up the lights go up.
That's
and
so
around.
Cool.
And it's like he plays with expectations, and in that scene at the end he plays with the expectations of they have this encounter and then everybody claps and you think that's the end and everybody thinks that's the end and then no, it is totally not the end.
So cool.
Spielberg is such a master of playing with your expectations, which is a mark of really great filmmaking.
I agree. And just two more really quick things. I'm sorry, Dave, but number one, the release, it was released. The studio wanted to push it earlier because they wanted it out by Christmas. This is according to my friend who I was talking to about this. So I don't have this. This isn't definitive, but he said that he was reading about it recently, and they said that the studio pushed it earlier because they wanted to release it by Christmas, and Spielberg wanted to release it in the summer. And they're like, no, you got to release it earlier. So he was like, all right, well, if we do that and it's a success, can we re-release my version, like the finished version, like the next year? And they were like, only if you put an end scene where you show the inside of the spaceship, because we think everybody wants to see that. And he was like, I don't like that. And they're like, well, that's the deal. And he was like, all right, fine. And so he did that part, which I think is, doesn't really add much, but he wanted to put the scene with the ship in the desert that evidently wasn't in the original cut, but he wanted to put it in. He just didn't have time. And there were a few other scenes that he wanted in there that ended up being it. If you do watch it, definitely watch the director's cut, because that's where he took out the stuff he thought shouldn't be in, and he put, that's the one.
I gotta watch that then. I didn't know there was a director's cut.
It's very good.
Also, if you ever go to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington D.C., you can see the mothership. They have the actual model that they use there, which is cool.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And there's a little R2-D2 in it.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's stuck onto the side of the ship.
Yeah.
And
right.
one last thing. I'm sorry. This is the very last thing I want to say about this movie is he captures the pandemonium of 1970s family life and business work life so well that it really felt, that's what made it feel like it could happen to me, because the whole, like, he looks like a 50-50 bar. I mean, there was a candy bar that was half white and half red back then.
Yeah.
There, it was called the 30-30 bar or something like that. But that, and just like you are close to death, and like all the little moments, it's same thing as in Jaws, the craziness.
Yes, I was thinking same thing.
No, come on.
It's the same communication between the family members.
I'm putting my foot down. We got to bring in some other movies.
Well, okay, move on. We'll continue this offline.
So wait, now I'm going to bring in two movies because we're so far behind schedule here. But so now I'm going to bring in Starman and Explorers, which also have to do with contacting aliens. And so in Starman, an alien comes to Earth and is shot down, and then sort of like grows into a replica of this woman's deceased husband, and then kind of has to learn how to be human, and they end up falling in love. But he only has 3 days to get picked up by his alien buddies again. And I thought it was really great. And then Explorers, there's a kid, and he keeps having dreams that he's flying over the circuit board, and he and his buddy inventor kid build the circuit board, and it allows them to create a sort of force field sphere, which enables them to make their own spaceship and fly up into space and meet aliens. And so I think that Explorers is like definitely the least good of these three movies.
Yep.
But I will say that the one thing that I think it really has going for it, at the end, the twist is that the aliens that they meet are kid aliens who just want to meet them because they've watched the radio television signals from Earth and have become really interested in Earth. And so there's this interesting juxtaposition where there's the kid from Earth who wants to learn about space, and there's the kid aliens from space who want to learn about Earth. And it actually made sense at the end what the aliens' motivation was. And so I feel like for all their strengths, Close Encounters and Starman, are way, way better in a lot of ways, and work really, really well emotionally and visually and everything. But that in the end, I don't understand what the aliens' motivations are or why they do the things that they do, whereas in Explorers, I do. So, Andrea, do you want to respond to any of that?
I hated Explorers.
Yeah,
that's pretty much.
I have to agree.
It's a children's movie.
Yeah.
It's a boys' fantasy movie.
Yeah.
And it didn't speak to me because I'm not a boy.
But did you think the twist was clever that the aliens turn out to be kids?
At that point, I hated it so much because that insanely long scene of the going through the different, commercials from the 80s and the insanity of that. I wanted to claw my eyes out.
Did you time it?
Ricardo, by the way.
I didn't. I thought, yes, exactly. It's Robert Picardo. I was tempted to do it, and then I'm just like, I hate this so much. I can't do it.
I hear you.
I swear to God, it was probably like 5 minutes though. It was just so painful.
I agree with you. That was terrible, for the record.
Yeah, and then when we get to the point of, it's just kids, it was just like, okay, great, good for you.
Yeah.
I watched it with one eye on the screen and one eye on my phone. That's how uninterested I was in it. As a time capsule of, it's Ethan Hawke and it's River Phoenix. It was cool. And Robert Picardo's in it, and James Cromwell, two Star Trek people. That was fun. It's an 80s time capsule. But other than that, I am definitely not the audience, and I don't think I was the audience at the time either. It's a movie for young boys, and that's pretty much it. Starman, I loved when I first saw it. I loved it again now. At one point, it was the last movie I watched, when I was watching them, I just stopped taking notes, and I just, it was so emotional, and I remember it being emotional when I was, 20 years ago, and it was emotional again. It hits exactly the right notes. The acting is fantastic. Karen Allen, so underrated.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I agree.
She's fantastic.
Yeah. And it was just so, it's just a beautiful movie. And by the way, apparently they're remaking it, which really kind of.
Oh, no, stop them.
Yeah. And the producer is Michael Douglas, as in that Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Yes,
he was the producer.
The original, yeah.
Yes, and also of the new one. Really? I just saw I just saw it on IMDb, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish they wouldn't.
he sort of
Go ahead.
my understanding is he acquired the rights to the screenplay initially because he wanted to star in it, but then the studio said he was too old, and then they cast Jeff Bridges, who's like 4 or 5 years younger than him. But yeah, I think he's still involved in the remake.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, like I thought emotionally it works incredibly well, I thought. But then I have the same problem of like, wait, why did they how does he not know more about Earth if they've been here before and they sent him and he's going to die in 3 days unless he makes it to this certain spot? And it's just like his mission doesn't make any sense. Like, what are they trying to accomplish exactly? So Matt, what do you think about that?
So I have a soft spot for Explorers. I saw this movie, I think when it came out. I don't think I saw it in the theater. And this hit my nerd bone really hard. It was like, just a kid who has this dream, and then they like hack together this force field that enables them to build a spaceship, and they build it out of junk parts, and then they fly into space. Like, that part was so cool as a kid. Like, I loved it so much. But I remember as a kid hating it once I met the aliens because I thought they were really cheesy and stupid.
Yep.
But as an adult, yes, they were really still cheesy and stupid. But I thought there was actually a really smart message in it, in that it's like, we expect the aliens to be, it was almost like the anti-Close Encounters. Like, we expect the aliens to be these spiritual, vast, intelligent beings to impart all this wisdom. And, they could be just as fucked up as we are, right? I like where the kid says, like, he looks at the screaming alien, the giant alien screaming at the two children aliens, and he goes, "Oh, that's the dad," Yeah. Like, he recognized that there's messed up shit all across the universe, not just, at home on Earth. And that part of it I enjoyed quite a bit. I forgot how annoying Ethan Hawke was in this. Like, he just whines a lot.
Yeah.
And like the whole romance subplot, like he likes the girl, and then at the end they're flying together. Like, I don't even think she said a word in the whole
No,
movie.
talk about objectifying. Holy cow.
Yeah. That part of
Not to mention he's creeping on her, looking at
I know.
he's looking in the window. It's like, come on, let's all look.
No,
Okay.
Matt, he does say a single word, or she does say a single word. She says his name, question mark, when he's looking through her window.
Perfect.
Oh, right. That's
There you
right.
go.
That's
There's a word right there.
That's all she needs to say.
It was creepy. Even as a kid, I remember thinking, like, that's kind of weird, like just staring in a window. Starman, on the other hand, I love that. I love this movie. So I think that, one of the things I love about Starman is how intimate it is. That we just start with, like, Karen Allen's, she's mourning the loss of her lover. I don't know when he died, but
6 months earlier.
6 months earlier.
Yeah.
And like, you just see it in her. And then along comes this alien in her lover's body. And I love that they don't waste time where she thinks it's him. Like, right away, she knows this is not her dead husband. She knows it. And then they just go from there. And it's like, she goes from being terrified of him to being less scared of him to seeing an empathic side of him, like when he heals the deer. Like, I really always, even to this day, like it
yes.
like I feel that so, like, powerfully. And just, you see that he really cares. He just wants to survive. And then
But what do you think, Matt, about my point that both Close Encounters and Starman work incredibly well emotionally, but don't work that well if you think about them?
So I think Close Encounters works better because the mystery is there. We don't know. Like, I think that, like Tom said, that big sense of wonder, question mark, that works for me. Close Encounters. I agree. Starman, it was like, yes, we've been here before. I did like the message of Starman in the sense he's like, the SETI guy, like, as if SETI has like people that go out and investigate it. But,
it's like ordering the police around.
Where he's like, we invited him here. We literally, like, with I don't know if the Voyager Golden Record actually says come to Earth, but the message is like, we come in peace, and then he comes and they shoot him down. Like, I thought that was really affecting.
Yeah.
Whether or not it makes sense, it's a conceit. I think that sometimes with these stories that, in order to get to the meat of the story, you have to be willing to suspend your disbelief a little bit about why he might have come there and the circumstances, etc.
Yeah,
But
I actually have a point about this, but I want to hear. Tom hasn't been able to talk
Yeah.
yet, but I want to come back around
Okay.
to it about this specifically.
I also want to just say really quickly, I think both Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges were amazing in this.
Yes.
Absolutely,
And their
yeah.
chemistry together, like the fact that Jeff Bridges is walking around like a robot who's like learning how to be human, and Karen goes from being terrified of him to loving him, like that arc was just so
Yeah.
beautifully done. Jeff Bridges eating an apple pie.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Just his face,
Yeah.
that alone, he should have gotten an Oscar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Tom, what do you think of Starman and Explorers?
So I'll start off with Explorers because I don't have too much to say about it. But I thought I saw this when I was like 20 or 25 or something like that, and instantly was like, okay, this is a kids movie. It's for kids. It's not for me. And maybe I would have liked it if I'd seen it when I was a lot younger. But I didn't. And then I thought the kernel of it is really cool and plausible. I think, I've read articles like if aliens do contact us, it almost certainly will be through some like digital form, that they won't come here in person. It'll be like we get like light messages, or they transmit their intelligence to us in the form of like radio waves, and they somehow like take over computers or whatever, like something like that. That's how like the close encounter of the third kind will actually happen. And so that's kind of how it happens.
Let me make a point on that. It's actually, I looked it up, and now I don't remember when Carl Sagan's Contact, either the novel or the film, came out. But this is almost
80s.
identical premise, right? That aliens transmit data to us to allow us to construct a machine that's going to allow us to go visit them. So it's kind of interesting that both those ideas, this is like the kids' version of Contact, basically.
Okay, I read that book when I was in high school, and I watched the show, religiously. No, I watched the show. What was his show? Was his show called Cosmos?
Cosmos. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the show religiously. In fact, my nickname in high school was Cosmos because my friends knew that I watched it all the time. So I probably came across that idea there as well. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. That's a really cool idea. And I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. And I was watching the movie, like, even though it was a kid's movie, I was right along with it almost the whole way up until we get to the aliens. And then I was like, what the heck?
Yep.
This does not appeal to me at all. I do think it is kind of a cool idea, like you said, Dave, that turns out they're kids, but it just reminded me of the original Star Trek show with Trelane in it, the general who turns out to be a kid. And at the end, he's like lording it over Kirk and Spock and everybody and killing people. And then his parents at the end are like, no, Trelane, if you can't play with your humans, you won't be allowed to have them at all. And it kind of reminded me of that. So I didn't really like it. But anyway, so Starman, I absolutely loved, and I had never seen it except I had seen snippets of it on TV and just turned by it because, like I said, it was romance and I didn't care. But my friend Greg, who I talked to him about, he's like, oh no, he's like, I watched the thing in high school and in the end always made me cry. And he's like, I've seen it so many times. And when I watched it all the way through this time, I was like, holy crap, I didn't know it was John Carpenter, number one.
Yeah.
I didn't know who I love, except in Dark Star. I didn't know it was, that it was based on the whole Voyager thing, which I thought was so cool. When I saw it at the beginning, I was like, wow, that's so awesome. I didn't know that, I didn't know the backstory about her. I knew from the movie that he was posing as somebody who died, her lover who died, but I didn't get the whole like setup for it. So when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's so powerful. And I loved the acting. I love Karen Allen you just have to love her in anything.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Bridges as well. He's so fun to watch in anything, but in this, he's so plausible and it's so funny. He walks this line between like you said, the Dutch apple pie scene where he's got the pie in his mouth and they're looking at him like, what's wrong? And he goes, Dutch apple pie. He's got the whipped cream in his mouth and he's just like, oh my gosh, it's so good. But also like imitating people because he doesn't know how to be like on Earth. So he just listens to what people says and then he pantomimes them. He imitates them back to themselves. And the thing
when he's hitchhiking. Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy's like, must be some kind of roadblock, I guess. And he's like, roadblock, I guess. and he like, everybody who talks to him, he like imitates them, and they're like, what? And then when he drives through the red light, she's like, what are you doing? He's like, no, I watched you very closely.
Yeah.
Red light stop, green light go, yellow light go very fast.
Go very fast.
Yeah.
I still say that.
So do I. That's one of those things I always remembered.
Yeah, it sticks in your head. But there's so many, like, I won't say unintentionally funny because they're supposed to be funny, but he doesn't think they're funny, and Karen Allen doesn't think they're funny. It's like, you know they're funny because you're watching the movie, but it's such a brilliant movie, and I love it. And then the ending, I had seen the ending before, not knowing the setup, not having watched the rest of the movie, and wasn't impressed by it. But having watched, watching the whole movie through this time, the ending is very powerful when he tells her he gave her a baby, but he'll take it back if she doesn't want it. And the baby will grow up to be a teacher, and she like kisses him and hugs him. She's so happy because that's all she wanted. Was like, she's like, I can't have kids. Like, I always wanted a kid with her significant other, but she couldn't have one. And then he gives that to her. And not only that, but it's basically going to like save the world. It's going to become this teacher who's going to help people. It's such a great
And it's
movie.
her husband's DNA. So it's basically,
so it's his baby too. Yeah.
It's his baby too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that Jeff Bridges' performance is phenomenal. I mean, apparently, I think he was like an Oscar nominee for it, and he lost to the guy who played Salieri in Amadeus.
Oh,
that's a tough competition.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, like just emotionally, I think this is just absolutely fantastic.
I agree.
So just a couple of points here. First of all, I do have one criticism, or at least I think it's a criticism. If this is based on Voyager and he has the Voyager record in his ship, Voyager only launched in 1977. And this movie is from like 1984. So it's only been like a few
hasn't
years.
Even left the solar system.
Exactly. That's my point. Like it hasn't even gotten to Pluto at that point. So where did he pick it up?
I watched this a few times, and I wonder that. And I think, at the beginning you see the Voyager probe go into what looks like a ringed planet. I actually think that's a spaceship and not a planet.
Oh, maybe.
Huh.
I don't know. But that was my question. That was the only question I had. Like, like
maybe the aliens from Close Encounters of the Third Kind picked up the thing and brought
it to
the
off to them.
Dropped it. Maybe it dropped through a black hole.
My other point is, Dave, and this is directly to what you were saying, that there's no explanation for why they're doing this. And I'm bringing this up because it's Casablanca's like 75th anniversary, and they're re-showing it in theaters now. And it's one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. And the whole plot of Casablanca is they're trying to get these letters of transit. Transit. Thank you. Letters of transit to get out of Casablanca. But the point of the movie is it's like a red herring. There's no a MacGuffin. I'm sorry. That's the thing. It's a MacGuffin. It's the point, but the real point is the story and the characters and the relationships.
The chemistry.
Those the papers are ridiculous. Like, if you actually think about it, it's like, wait, it can never be questioned? That's absurd.
Right.
So it's not the point. It's the point isn't why they're here. The point is the relationship and the story and the characters and their characters' relationships. So that's, I think you have to go look at it that way.
No, I agree with you that, I mean, I don't think most people are going to care that much. I think most people are going to enjoy the movie because most people are just sort of emotional people and they care about the emotions and stuff. I'm just saying,
and you don't, is what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're a hardcore science fiction
fan,
fan,
robot,
like me, I just think it's interesting to talk about, like, if the setup of the story is he's going to die in 3 days. Like, why? That doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, like, and it's like, if that's the only way to tell this story, then okay, fine, who cares? But it's like, could we at least have a conversation about whether there's any way to justify that, or whether there's some other, setup that would have worked better?
I mean,
or made more sense?
I think you can dig into it and think maybe there's something there, because he wasn't supposed to crash and use Jeff Bridges' DNA to become this hybrid. He was supposed to go straight somewhere else, straight to that crater, and then something was supposed to happen there. The ship was supposed to pick him up, but he was supposed to do something there first. So he could only like sustain himself in Jeff Bridges' DNA body that he made maybe for 3 days before he died. Or I don't really know.
I mean, my read is that he's separated from his power source, like those balls that he carries
right.
are some kind of power that his people have, and with his ship crashed, that's all the power he has left. He only has enough, and that they're coming in 3 days. If he doesn't make it, he's going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's
a little
but they could have just
that.
explained. They could have. I mean, you could. I think there could be an explanation. I just think maybe there could have been one line of dialogue explaining that kind of stuff. You know, like why was he sent here and what was his mission exactly? And I don't know. I think that would be interesting. But go ahead, Andrea.
I was just gonna say, it's the ending is just so affecting, and the music also is really, it just gets you in the gut for me every time.
Me too.
But here's me extrapolating to a really bummer ending. The minute that ship is gone, those army guys are gonna take her and they're gonna take her apart, literally. So I don't know. That's always what I think of.
Yeah, and
when
then
I
he
get
gives
to that
her
ending.
one of those, alien
balls.
spheres, and then like they're not going to be like, okay, go home.
Yeah, go home. Yeah,
Well,
she's not going home.
Maybe
She's
she
gonna get locked up.
Maybe she uses the ball to make them all like forget, like a Men in Black flashy thing, memory eraser.
Anyway, that's me being a Blackheart.
I think I saw they're gonna remake. Or wait, you mentioned that, right? That they're remaking this?
They're remaking it. Yeah.
Ugh.
Do you know there was a TV show that I remember as well? They made a TV show about it, her and the baby, but
Really?
yeah.
So maybe
I don't know what happened. I don't remember. I must have watched it because I remember it, but I don't know. It must have been because it didn't last long.
So maybe the new one can open with her, and she's just been in this like padded cell for the last 30 years, like being experimented on. Yeah.
Like, thanks,
so much
Starman.
No.
Thanks.
No.
All right, actually, so I thought I was going to save Dark Star for last, but I think I changed my mind. I think I want to go into Dark Star now because
let's rip it off.
John Carpenter,
Rip it right off.
and it also has the word star in it, so I think that makes a nice segue there. So the reason that I have this on the list is that I just heard that George R. R. Martin liked this movie, and when he reopens the Jean Cocteau Theater in Santa Fe, it was like a triple screening, and this was one of the movies that he picked for opening night. And there's a character in Song of Ice and Fire whose like nickname is Dark Star, which I'm almost certain is a reference to this movie.
Must be.
So that's why I wanted to watch it. And so it sounds like everyone else didn't like it at all. I'll say that I watched like 75% of it thinking this is really bad. I don't know why anyone likes this. But then I actually really liked the ending. Like the last couple of things that happened at the end, I really liked. And ended up being like, oh, that was I actually kind of like the ending of that. I guess I'll just explain. So this is a movie from 1974. It was John Carpenter's first movie. And it was a collaboration between him and Dan O'Bannon when they were film students at USC.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it went well enough. And it was originally like a 45-minute student film. And then somehow it got shown to a, producer or executive or something who was like, oh, we could make this into a real movie. And so they added the whole thing. They added a bunch of stuff, including the whole thing with the beach ball alien.
Oh, no.
God.
To pad it out to feature length. And so there was actually a funny quote from Dan O'Bannon where he says it went from being the most impressive student film of all time to the least impressive professional film of all time.
Makes sense.
Yep.
I was thinking that they could have done a highlight reel of this, and I might have said, oh, that was amusing.
Yeah, I think at 45 minutes, this would actually be pretty good.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Because I started out laughing.
Yeah.
Like I was laughing at the beginning, but then it was just like the whole scene with the beach ball alien and then the elevator thing.
Oh God, the elevator.
I was like, oh my God,
elevator.
what the hell? It's like a Three Stooges routine.
Yeah, so let me just—I don't know if I explained. So it's there's like what four guys, I guess, and they're on this spaceship out in deep space, and they've been out in space for like 10 or 20 years or something, and they've kind of gone crazy, and the ship is running down. And it's sort of a screwball comedy, kind of absurdist kind of thing. But the thing that makes it interesting historically is that Dan O'Bannon, like I said, he added in there's this part where there's this beach ball alien kind of runs around the ship and this guy tries to hunt it down. I think it's actually Dan O'Bannon himself playing the character who's hunting it down, if I remember right.
Oh, the guy Pinchbeck.
Yeah,
Pinback,
Pinback.
yeah.
Yeah.
Finback.
Finback?
No, Pinch. No, it's Pinchbeck.
No, it's Finback. Finback.
It's
IMDb
No.
says Pinback, but I heard when they were saying I heard Finback, but P.
I was looking at the names on the
Me too.
Yeah.
outfits.
Me too.
It said Pinchbeck.
It said Pinchback. I noticed that their
Yeah.
names were misspelled, actually. Like Doolittle, I think, had like a missing eye. or
Yes, there was a
something.
missing eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
all right. I'm almost certain it's Pinback, but let's just agree to disagree. But so anyway, so that's Dan O'Bannon, and so he added in this thing where he's hunting down the alien, and then when he showed it, it was supposed to be funny and nobody laughed, and he was like, maybe I should make this like not funny, and so he rewrote it as Alien, and that's where the movie Alien came from.
Oh, wow.
What?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
Dan
kinda
O'Bannon
insane.
wrote it.
Did he
Yeah.
write the movie Alien? He did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Talk
I
about
didn't know
finding
that.
some gold in a pile of dung. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm just stunned.
But so
So-
Tom, wait, well, I want to ask Tom that Tom, I would have expected some of this to be up your alley because it has a little bit of a Douglas Adams kind of thing with the bombs that you have to, that want to blow up and all this stuff. Was there nothing that you found appealing about this movie?
No, I did notice that. It kind of reminded me of like the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV show with the bad
Mhm.
special effects and the so-so acting and everything just kind of like, there were some funny, like I did see like shades of Douglas Adams with the bomb that was like, no, I can't, I'm not going back in the bomb bay. I'm not listening. Like that was that way. You're right. But, basically I went into this thinking, okay, John Carpenter, I'm going to see proto John Carpenter here and see what he did. And I'm glad to hear that this was a student film. It makes total sense now.
Yes.
It's kind of like Sam Raimi, Evil Dead, the first Evil Dead movie he made as a student film, and it's pretty good. This is just terrible. I was kind of hoping when you said that it was shorter and they made it longer, I was hoping that maybe like some brilliant film school teacher was like, you know what you should do? You should make some kind of conflict at the end. And the beach ball scene was already there and the elevator scene. But no, he told him to add the beach ball. Never mind that guy. But yeah, I think if you squint past the beach ball, the bad acting, the bad special effects, and the odd story elements, there's kind of a cool suspenseful plot here. So that's what I came away with. I was like, I do like the, like you said, at the very end, when at the very beginning and the very end, how they set up like these are people who go around, they have these bombs that can blow up an entire planet, and then at the end, one of the bombs goes crazy, and thinks because of a malfunction thinks that it has to listen to its programming, and this guy has to try to talk it out of it. That was really cool.
Yeah, with persuading it of radical skepticism. I was laughing.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Yeah.
laugh out loud funny to me.
Yeah, that was really cool, but that was only like 10 minutes of the movie. Like the rest of the stuff they put in there to make it into a movie was just like, oh, this is so horrible. But one thing I did kind of like, although I hated the elevator scene, I did kind of like, I thought it was a cool sort of exercise in how you build suspense, in that they're going to have him like hanging from the elevator and figure out how to fix it, but then the way he fixes it doesn't work. And then that leads him to another thing he has to try. And that was kind of oddly suspenseful, even though it was really annoying. I was like, oh, there, you can see sort of proto John Carpenter here saying, this is how you would use complications to tell a story. So that was kind of fun. But other than that, no, I didn't find anything really.
Let me just mention before other people, let me just mention the things I liked at the end. So where the movie started to kind of turn around for me was first Pinback, and I swear it's Pinback. He tells the story about how he like stole someone's uniform, and that's how he ended up on this mission. And I was like, oh, this is actually kind of funny.
That was cool. That was cool.
And then one of the guys goes down to talk to the captain who's dead, but his brain is there's still like electrical activity in his brain, so they can still sort of talk to him, but and I was like, this is actually pretty cool. And then when he like talks, he like teaches the bomb philosophy to get it to not blow up. And then and then at the end where like one guy goes into the pretty meteor shower that he's been talking about, and the other guy surfs down into the atmosphere.
That was cool.
Like all that stuff, I was like, this, like if it had been like a 10-minute movie, or maybe like just enough to set up that stuff, I think
If
this
it
would
had
have been
been
pretty cool.
just as short as a student film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Because like I said, I was laughing at the beginning. The whole message from Earth where they're like, "Oh, sorry, we can't help you with the radiation shielding."
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And the scenes between the guys in the control and then in their, in their bunks, it goes on a little too long, but it's funny.
Yeah.
But the beach ball scene and the elevator scene, it was just like it took too much out of me. And I could see if you cut all that extraneous shit out of it, it would have been a really funny movie because the beginning and the ending are really good.
Yeah.
But the one of the things I wrote here in my notes was student film. That was it. It's a student film. But if it would have, I can see how it was a really good student film. I absolutely can see that. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and there was one funny moment too, Dave, where you're right, it's Pinback. I just looked it up so I could say, I told you it was Finback, and I was like, oh shoot, it's wrong. It's Pinback. But so he comes back in after the elevator scene, and they're going to have lunch, and he goes, "You guys, I was hanging in the elevator for 20 minutes. And he's like trying to tell him about it. And then one guy's like, "What are we having for lunch?" And he's like, "It was 20 minutes. I was hanging there. I almost died." And he goes, "Probably chicken again." And then he starts telling the story about how he stole the guy's uniform. And the guy's like, instead of reacting to him at all, one character looks at the other and says, "He told us this 4 years ago." And the other guy goes, "No, I disagree. It was 4 years ago." And he goes, "Yeah, it wasn't." The first guy goes, "No, it wasn't." Like, that was cracking me up.
Yeah.
So Matt, anything else you want to add?
I want to add that this movie was referenced in all this pop culture stuff that I had forgotten. So, did anyone ever? Are you guys familiar with the band OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark?
Yep, of course.
So they had an album called Dazzle Ships, which is like their concept album. It's very science fictional, and there's a lot of clips from this movie that I didn't realize, like sounds and beeps. And I think it's the song, it might be Genetic Engineering, the song that takes clips from this film. I thought the bombs plural they were super funny. And like I wrote down Red Dwarf because I feel like
exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Talkie toaster. Yep. Like the bombs are basically talkie toaster. Like doodly doo.
Yep.
Well,
they're just like these like, I'm ready to blow something up. Like I was that's talkie toaster.
Well, Matt, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I swear at some point I read a note where it said that the guy who came up with Red Dwarf watched this, and then that inspired him to create.
I could totally see it.
Totally see it. Yeah,
I totally see it. So I didn't know that Pinback or Finback or whatever his name is was the guy who
Pinchback.
Dan O'Bannon. I didn't know that he wrote Alien because when they did the knife thing with his hand, I'm like, oh, that's right out of Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like, wow. Oh, yep, that's why it's in both.
That's crazy.
So there's like this surf rock science fiction band that was big in the 90s called Man or Astro Man. Do you ever heard of them?
Oh, yeah.
And they take a lot of quotes from this movie. Like the one is like, "Do you think we'll ever find any intelligent life out there?" And the other guy goes, "Who cares?"
That was great. That was actually really funny, yeah.
Oh, man. And then I thought, there were parts that were funny. Like I liked when the officer does the message home and the computer's like, offensive language will be deleted. And then he has a calm message. And then they cut to a different one. It's just all deleted, just all bleeped out. And then the calm, and then the angry one, the calm. Like that stuff was really funny. And I think that with a rigorous edit, like this could be a really funny, entertaining film. But just like that one scene where they're going through the ion storm, I'm like, oh man, I don't have epilepsy, but I think this is giving me epilepsy. Like it was flashing so bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's if you're a science fiction person, it might be worth seeing just because I think a lot of things reference this, and it's
definitely a huge historical interest. I mean, I was really surprised. Just to find out how important this was, after as I was researching it.
Crazy.
That was a lot more positive than I was expecting from how you guys were at the start of the.
Well, I mean, the beach. We just avoided all this stuff, like the beach ball. What the?
Yeah,
it was
like
so
20
annoying.
minutes of what the fuck's going on here.
Yeah.
But
the minute you said it, like it was a student film that got a bunch of stuff padded into it. It made so much sense because my disconnect from it was there's a lot of really funny stuff in here, a lot of really funny 70s stoner comedy going on here, but it just has these parts that are interminable, and it's what completely just made me angry. But I can see how you can cut a really funny student movie out of this. And I can see why somebody was like, I want to buy this. I want to make you filmmakers.
Well, and it's like a really interesting proto-alien movie, right? Where you have this like rundown ship in space and these blue-collar workers, and it's all dirty and everything.
Chasing the alien around the ducting and
I mean, it's basically a spoof of 2001.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't give it a super high recommendation, but definitely if you just want to see, because it's of such historical interest, I think if you're a hardcore science fiction fan, you probably want to watch it if you can sit through some of the slower parts. All right, but let's get on to our last movie, Tron. Speaking of slower parts, see, Tom, I think in our last episode, maybe somebody, when I mentioned Tron, you were like, "Oh, that's great." Do you still think it's great, having rewatched it?
Yeah, I get the sense that I'm going to be a minority here, but I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie, and I have since the first time I saw it. I missed it in the theater, and then I was home one Sunday. I think I said this on an earlier Geeks Guide episode. I was flipping through, and my older brother came through, who introduced me to like Stranger in a Strange Land and a lot of other science fiction. And he was like, "Oh, you got to watch this. This is a great movie." And I was like, "Okay." So I watched the rest of it, and then the next time it was on, I watched the whole thing. And then ever since then, it's one of those movies that I watch every few years, and I absolutely love it. I think it has a cool story. I think it's not science fiction. I think it's fantasy with a science fiction setting, with a technical setting rather. And a technological setting. I think it's just a really cool fantasy story. It rolls together a lot of cool elements that somebody who is my age grew up immersed in, like gladiator movies. Not to reference Airplane, but there were a lot of gladiator movies on TV all the time for whatever reason when I was a kid.
Absolutely, 100%.
It pulls that into the gladiator movie in with the video game culture that was huge at the time it was made. In with religion, which was also huge at the time it was made, in with just lots of other themes, and pulls them all together and synthesizes them into this totally new, beautifully imagined world, like richly imagined world, where I'm just blown away. It's such an original thing.
Yes.
The whole story is just so cool. Oh, and also corporate evil was a big thing back then when the movie came out.
Actually, Tom, let me just explain the plot. So there's a video game master / expert programmer played by Jeff Bridges, who we just saw in Starman, and he had invented a bunch of games on his company mainframe, and then his boss sort of stole them all and pretended that he wrote them and became like president or something, vice president of the company. And fired Jeff Bridges. And so ever since Jeff Bridges, he opened his own video game arcade, and he's been trying to sort of hack into the mainframe to find evidence to prove that these were his games. And so he gets some help from some of his friends who still work at the company and who sneak him into the office. And then he's going to hack into the system. And there's this evil AI called the Master Control Program, right? Who sort of blasts him with a laser, which digitizes him and transports him into the like cyberspace world of the computer, where programs are people, and there's this sort of the Master Control Program runs this authoritarian state that is suppressing the belief in the users who are they're trying to make it so that the programs aren't allowed to acknowledge that there's humans who wrote them and give them commands and stuff. So basically, and it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz, where like all the real life characters have their analogs in the virtual world, and so the characters have to kind of go on this quest to overthrow the evil Master Control Program. Okay,
so perfect. So just to wrap up that thought, the two other quick things about it. I also I was going to say, aside from the religion, also the idea of like totalitarian regimes, because everybody's worried about communism back when this came out.
Huh.
But so it's also still, to me, when I watch it today, it's amazing to me how visually it still really holds up. Although you can tell it's not CGI. There's a little bit of CGI in it, but visually, I still think it's stunning.
Whoa.
Yeah, very. At the end, there is a little bit of animation.
Animation, of course.
Yeah.
No. Well, this was the first movie to have any significant amount of CGI in it. I think there's about 20 minutes of CGI, and then the rest of it is like hand-drawn animation designed to look like CGI.
Yeah, kind of rotoscoped or whatever, partially rotoscoped or whatever. But it's stunningly, like, visually stunning. And then the other thing I just want to say about it is it was. Although I never watched the movie, the video game was huge when it came out. Like, I played that video. That was my favorite video game in the arcade when I would get
light cycles and
light cycles and the spiders game. You know, the robot, which don't really feature in the film very much, but it's a cool part of the video game, and the MCP cone part. And that video game was. When I would get my free tokens for getting an A in school, I would go right into the arcade near us, and I would pump those into that Tron game, and I would play that thing. And then when I see the movie, that video game just comes back to me. It was so much fun. It was such a great game, and it's cool that it was a movie about video games, and they made a really good video game out of it.
Yeah.
But
actually,
that's about it.
Just interesting historical footnote is that the movie sort of bombed at the box office, but then they made a ton of made a ton of money off the video game. So the video game actually made more money than the movie.
The movie.
Wow,
that makes a lot of sense.
So how about Andrea? What do you think about Tron?
Well, for me, it was one of those movies where that's so part of the American zeitgeist that I thought I had seen it. But then I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't think I've ever actually seen this movie completely. And I was shocked at how much I disliked it. Well, I mean, all right, I'm not going to say disliked. That's not quite right. It's a kid's movie. And I realized at the end, it's actually a Disney movie, which makes sense that Jeff Bridges is in it because Jeff Bridges was a Disney child star. But the problem for me was there's no character development at all. Like, I don't care about these characters and they're getting what they want because I'm never made to care about them. I don't care about what they want.
Yeah, and they never really are faced with any hard decisions or making any big choices or anything.
It's a kid's adventure movie with very little to recommend it for an adult because there's just no connection to the characters. The look of it is still amazing. I agree with that. It's got that 80s angularity to everything. It reminded me of the graphics that they used in Weird Science. There's a lot of that. The graphs and the vectors looks to all of it. And it's still visually cool. But it's just this. There's no real story other than they're in this video game and they have to do this thing. It's a quest. I think it was a really good comparison to that you made, Dave, to Wizard of Oz. Yeah, that is exactly what it's like. But it's got that very stiff delivery and dialogue. In the real world scenes, there's like no room tone. So it's just like this empty echoing and you don't get the music until the video game part, which is also very, Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But it was not a good movie from an adult point of view, but I can see, and it's one of those things you can look back and go, yep, I see exactly why this was, has become a cult classic because of its look. Also, I have a question. Why is the movie called Tron when Tron isn't the main character?
Well, Tron
sounds better than Flynn.
Yeah, it does sound better than Flynn. It absolutely sounds better than Flynn. But it was just it's a question that I kept asking through the whole thing.
Well, I could actually
Tron
tell.
is a secondary character.
Well,
go ahead.
Basically, Tron was originally the main character, and then as they developed it, he became not the main character, but it was already called Tron by that point.
Okay.
Interesting.
But I want to get Matt in here too. So Matt, where do you come? We have a diversity of opinion there between Tom and Andrea. So where do you come down on this?
Yeah. So I just want to preface this by saying that I did see this in the theater. I actually remember going to the theater with my whole family, and my two older sisters hated this film, and I loved it. I was actually taking programming classes at the time, and then like this just hit all like my nerdy spots. It was just like the coolest thing ever. Oh my God, you could go into the computer and play the games, and it was just like, and it's really like, I think it's like impossible to overstate just how visionary and groundbreaking this film was. And I don't think there really has been anything to that degree. I mean, maybe you might say Blade Runner sort of changed the vision of science fiction, the view of science fiction in that way. But like Tron, it was just like unbelievably different from anything that had gone before. Yes, as an adult, if I rewatched it, as I've rewatched it a couple times in the past few years, there's not a lot of character development. It's really just a simple adventure plot. But like I love all the like the computer references, like bit, bit goes, yes, no,
that's so funny.
Bring in the logic probe, Right. I was like, yeah. And one thing I noticed actually was at some point, I forgot who said it. They're like, "Oh, bring up your Wayback Machine and tell me blah blah
yes,
blah." And I'm like,
the beginning.
"Oh, is that where they got the Wayback Machine from?" Like, or is that
it
a
comes
thing
from
that people?
It comes from the super old Peabody and Mr. Sherman, the super old cartoon.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Because Dave, when you first said Wayback Machine to me like 10 years ago, you were like, "Oh, you just look it up in the Wayback Machine." I was like, "What is he talking? Is he talking about Peabody and Sherman?" That was the name of their time machine, but that's where that came from.
I was like, oh,
maybe
that.
I was like, oh, maybe the Wayback Machine got it from Tron, but okay, it's not from that. Also, there was like a little, I guess, Easter egg where they're like flying over the grid, the landscape, and I saw a Mickey Mouse head there. I was like,
no, really?
Yeah, it's quick. I almost missed it. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of like all that cool stuff, or we'll ride the light wave over to the main program, and then I love how the programs think of the users as sort of gods, and then the MCP is encouraging them like, no, it's not real. You should listen to me.
Let me just ask you though, Matt. I mean, I agree with you and Tom that like this movie is visionary and visually amazing and conceptually audacious, and I'll give you all that. I just find it boring to watch, and I'm just like, do you not get bored watching it?
I think that there are parts of it that can be a little long. I didn't get bored watching it, but it might be nostalgia propelling that. I think that if I had encountered this as an adult, I might not feel the same way. In fact, I definitely won't. Like the evil dude,
Dillinger.
Who's great, by the way.
Yeah, he like if you look at his costume, it's like, oh, it just looks like a stupid hood he's wearing, and it's like, if you pretend you're 12 when you watch it, like the hotshot programmer who's like kicked out of the company and gets sucked into the video game that he created and has to actually play it. I thought that was really cool. Like where he flies the broken recognizer, and he has like
that's cool.
Like Neo-like powers to control the virtual world.
And then when they drink the electricity out of the pool, that's really cool.
Yeah, I found like there's just so many cool visionary things, and there were like little nods and references to like 80s geek culture, 80s computer culture, which like the personal computer had like just arrived on the scene, so it was like it was really new for everybody. And I like the I know we're not talking about the sequel, but I like the sequel, but I feel like one of the things that it missed was it didn't quite capture the zeitgeist of the time. Like they could have added so much stuff that's happened in the computer world since then, and they didn't, and that was sort of disappointing. But I don't know. I still think that this movie is just Like,
let me just run something run something by you, because I feel like just like really obviously that this should cut back and forth between the real world and the video game world. Like you mentioned the Matrix, like it goes, they're in the Matrix and they're in the real world, and they're in the Matrix and they're in the real world. And I just feel like if it was like an hour, solid hour of them being in the Matrix, it's just too much. You need some contrast there. And so and
you need to know what's going on out there. Like I kept wondering where the Alan, the Tron person, was at his terminal, what he was doing.
He was only in the system. Flynn was only in the system for milliseconds.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, Dave. I think it does. It does suffer from a little bit of that. You remind me when you say like, do you really like it now, or do you like it as an adult? You remind me of I was talking to my nephew again. You're such a young kid, Dave. But I was talking to my nephew about Family Guy, and he was like, I was like, do you think it's funny? And he was like, well, it's kind of funny, but you have to be like an expert in like 80s pop culture to understand it. And I was like, or you have to have grown up in the 80s.
Yes.
It's all you have to do. And that's the reason I think that's maybe the reason Matt and I love Tron so much, is that, and maybe Andrea, maybe there's a little bit of a gender thing there where they just kind of sideline the female character so much that it's annoying. But because I think you are kind of
every sci-fi movie at the time did the same thing, exact thing.
They did, but I think you are kind of closer in age to me and Matt than you are to Dave. But I do think this movie really speaks to me on such a zeitgeist level of like everything I grew up through, that I can't be bored by it. Whereas maybe if I had been born like 10 years later, maybe I would be like, it doesn't really, it's kind of a little bit boring. It's not as much of a classic as Close Encounters is, in that a young kid today could watch Close Encounters and be like, wow.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, yes, to all of that, Tom, because I think we're the same age, Tom. We're not saying numbers here, but I think we're the same age. But like, yes, everything about it references the 80s for me. It brings back lots of memories. But I think, and you made this point, is it's for young boys who were both of you guys were into computers at the time.
Yeah.
I was into, fantasy novels. I was into movies of, fantasies with characters and emotions. For me, that's what draws me into a story. And I think that's what great art does. It's about emotion and connecting in a human way. And this movie does not connect in any kind of emotional human way. So it doesn't bring anything up for me, either as an adult now or as a kid at the time, because I wasn't a boy and I wasn't into computers. So I think that's the disconnect for me.
It makes sense.
No, that's totally. I understand that too, and just imagine how great this movie could have been with a better script.
Good point.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
Good point. I never thought of it that way. I never thought that this movie lacked anything until this discussion, and now I'm like, okay, I can see where if you put some emotion into it, it would be better.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna watch it every couple of years and be like, "Oh, this sucks. Why did I participate in that channel?"
This is really all about ruining things for people.
I don't think so. I think I'm still gonna really enjoy it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like it hits on so many levels for me that I think I'll be okay.
And that's an interesting point. Whoever said it about that, the whole story takes place in like a millisecond or something, so you couldn't really cut back and forth.
Yeah, because that makes sense. I mean, yes, that makes sense now, but I think it would have been a richer story if we just left that whole "it's a millisecond" behind and cut back and forth, so so I understand what the stakes are, because there's never really, like, for me, there aren't any stakes, and I'm not invested in it, in the story.
I felt like the stakes were that, number one, that Jeff Bridges wasn't going to get out alive, and number two,
die.
He was
but I don't give a shit. That's the problem.
And number two, that's valid. And then number two, that that all this whole like vast society of these sentient programs, which doesn't make sense from a technical point of view, but this whole vast society is just going to remain under the thumb of this oppressive regime. That also felt like the stakes to me. But again, I guess if you don't care about the characters,
but that's very abstract, Tom. I mean, we need like a character that we identify with emotionally.
I think in the 80s there was a lot of lovable rogue male characters.
Yes, there sure were.
And I think it was like, oh, the lovable rogue, of course we'll fall in love with this character, like without really a lot of character development. It was just an archetype that they were just hoping you just bond with as an audience. And I think like as a kid, I totally did. And like as an adult, when I see these characters now, I'm exhausted by them. I'm like, oh God, not another one.
Not another one.
Yeah, well, because there's the whole save the cat thing where you're supposed to have the hero do something nice at the beginning. So that
right.
Does Jeff Bridges ever do anything like nice or generous or anything?
I bet he does. I can't think of it. No, I can't think of it.
No. He moves in on his friend's girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend / new girlfriend of his friend. So it's kind of like there's nothing really lovable about that.
Right.
But,
yeah. And then
yeah. Anyway.
Oh Jeff.
But then a couple of years later he does Starman, and it's just like you fall in love with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a really good actor. I don't think they just
wonderful.
gave him a good script.
No,
maybe he got a different agent.
It's totally the script. It's absolutely 100% the script.
Huh.
Yeah. All right. So we're pretty much coming up on time here. I guess I'll just mention, I wanted to say that if you like Dark Star, I interviewed
have your head examined. Sorry.
I interviewed this guy, so you could go back through the archives and look for it. But this guy, Max Barry, and he wrote a book called Providence, and it reminds me a lot of Dark Star, or it's like I would say a much better version of Dark Star. I don't know if he was influenced by it or not, but the premise is that there's these 4 crew members on this ship that's sent to fight aliens, and they realize at some point that the ship is completely automated and the AI is running everything, and they're only there to provide human interest to the crowds back on Earth so that they keep getting funding for these missions. And it's really funny, and it's the same sort of absurdist kind of people lost in space dealing with crazy, trying to talk sense into robots and that kind of thing. So I would really recommend that. And also, I don't know if you guys know, since you like Close Encounters of the Third Kind so much, there's this director called Jeff Nichols, and 2 of his movies are Midnight Special and Take Shelter.
Oh.
And
I feel like I've seen Midnight Special.
Yeah,
I feel like I have too, but I can't.
I don't remember what it's about.
And having watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I'm 100% sure that he was explicitly trying to recreate Close Encounters of the Third Kind in both those movies, because they're very, very, very like. Take Shelter is like the first half of Close Encounters, and Midnight Special is like the second half of Close Encounters. And they're both really, really good too. I think Take Shelter is better, but they're both really good.
I gotta watch them now.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so we need to start wrapping this up. So Andrea, final thoughts on these 5 movies?
If people haven't seen Close Encounters, you must see it. It is still to this day, it's almost more than 40 years old, and it still stands up as one of the greatest movies ever made, frankly. Starman is affecting and emotional and a beautiful film. Tron, for me, boring and dated, but there's something there. Explorers drove me crazy. I hated it, hated everybody. And Dark Star was a little bit like dropping acid and listening to REO Speedwagon.
Oh yeah, it was exactly like that. I've done that. No, I'm just kidding. I've never dropped acid. I'm kidding.
So there you go. That's my sum up.
All right, cool. Tom, final thoughts.
I think where all of these movies, I think, Close Encounters, definitely far and away the best one. Starman, number 2. I really like Tron, number 3. The other 2 I could do without. But I think where any of these movies succeeds or fails is in the sense of wonder they create, which is such a cliche in the science fiction world, right? But they really do. And I think if you go back and you watch the sequel to Tron, you see the exact opposite. It's a good movie. It's a solid movie. It has all the story elements you're talking about. But instead of saying, let's pull in all these things that people care about and synthesize them into this thing that catches the zeitgeist, they're saying, let's look at this old movie and see why people liked it and do it again. And that's maybe the sickness that's invading our art today, or at least our cinema today.
Yeah.
That hopefully, if you're young and you're going to start making movies, think about that.
Yeah.
Don't try to figure out why the movie before you. Don't try to do what they did. Try to, what's the quote? If I stood on the shoulders of giants or whatever. Don't try to follow in the footsteps of those movies. Seek what they sought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, final thoughts.
So Close Encounters, that's easily in my top 5 movies of all time. It might be my favorite movie of all time. I mean, I know I love Blade Runner, but Close Encounters has got to be a close second. I can watch this movie anytime. I love it so much. Definitely that sense of wonder. I mean, there are moments of this film where I just tear up. It's so great. Starman, again, like this is like whereas like Close Encounters has like this personal but really also epic thing. I think Starman is like all intimate. It's like totally intimate, and I think that's what I love about it. It's just the relationship between Karen Allen's character and Jeff Bridges. It's so touching and affecting that I absolutely recommend it. Tron, I have a soft spot for it. It hit me at the right time when I was a kid. So watching it now, there's a lot of nostalgia for me. It is a visionary film. I agree. Not the best story. Don't redo it, please. Hollywood, just let it be.
Yeah.
Explorers, if you can pretend you're a 12-year-old boy in the 80s, you probably would really like it. If that's not your thing, then it probably won't. It's like, it has the premise of a decent science fiction story, but unfortunately we've seen a lot of stories like this before, so it might not be that surprising for you, but I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. Dark Star, like we said, cut 45 minutes out of this film. Just give me the highlight reel. I'd find it amusing. There's some interesting parts. You could definitely see how this influenced a lot of other science fiction TV and film, etc. Would I watch it again? Probably not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just say, Close Encounters and Starman, I think, worked amazingly well emotionally. I have some logical problems, but, whatever. I think Tron and Dark Star are worth watching if you're a sort of a science fiction fan and interested in, their historical value. And the Explorers, I kind of like, but I think if you listen to this, you sort of heard everything interesting about it. You probably don't need to actually watch the movie. But overall, I thought this was a pretty solid group of movies. In my opinion, there was no Howard the Duck in here. So does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a step up from Howard the Duck.
You've been absolved of your sins.
I don't know why you didn't have us watch The Thing in this group instead of Dark Star, but that's
I was thinking that we should do a John Carpenter series.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. Because I was looking, because I had no idea that Dark Star was a John Carpenter movie until I looked at the credits. So then I just pulled up an IMDb, and I'm like, oh my God, there's so many amazing. I mean, I know this is ridiculous to say, but there's so many amazing John Carpenter films. That.
I've actually never seen The Thing.
I know. What?
I know. That's like Dave saying he's never seen Close Encounters. Yeah. I just missed it, and then every time I'm like about to watch it, we're like and then it's like someone's like, oh, let's watch this other thing. Okay, and I keep like before the pandemic, I had plans to like have people over, and we were going to watch The Thing, and I was going to have a big group of people, and that never happened. So
God, I
would love
movie.
an excuse to watch it.
Me too. Oh, me too. It's I can watch that movie anytime.
I know everyone raves about it.
It's
I've never
fantastic.
Seen it. I know
it's
that's crazy,
so good. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, interesting historical note. John Carpenter, the reason he directed Starman is because he was desperate for work after The Thing was a box office disaster.
Wow.
He was afraid he would never get work again because it did so badly.
It's so funny that the story of so many science fiction movies is it was an absolute box office disaster, and then it becomes a cult classic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The Thing and
Terminator, right? Didn't do so well.
Really?
Really?
Didn't the first one not do well, or am I thinking?
I don't think that's right at all.
Well, Blade Runner.
I know Blade Runner bombed.
Kind of like Star Wars. Star Wars didn't do well at all.
No.
I don't think E.T. did that well, if I remember.
All right. Okay. Here we go. We're talking about movies I've never seen E.T.
What?
See?
Yeah.
I shut everybody up with that one.
What is wrong with everybody?
I don't think that one holds up as well as Close Encounters, to be honest, because I've rewatched it a few years ago.
I did too. I agree.
It's still fun, but it's not quite Close Encounters.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can do something like movies that like people are baffled when we admit we never saw.
Right. I can't believe you've never seen.
I know. Yeah. Well, I think that's everybody's got a movie like a famous box office movie that they've never seen. Like everybody has one.
I don't think I have one.
I've never seen Titanic.
I don't think I have
unfortunately, one. I finally did see Titanic. It was
all right. We need to wrap this up, but we're getting. I think we're getting some promising.
Way off course here.
Yeah,
we're getting some promising ideas for future panels. So everyone, stay tuned. We'll come up with something good for next time. We got to wrap things up there. So we've been speaking with Andrea Kail, Matthew Kressel, and Tom Gerencer. So thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to Andrea Kail, Matthew Kressel, and Tom Gerencer for joining us on the show. And remember that Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/geeks or via PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. All right, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.